Welcome back to the studio, everybody. This is Bobby. On deck today, I've got this Mr.Freeze statue from B3dserk Studios. This is the second entry in my Year of the Villains, and I really like this Mr.Freeze statue. Got a really rad suit, and these little transparent bits. I'm looking forward to putting this one together. So without further ado, let's get into it. I have the parts washed and cured, and ready for the first step. Let's head over to the sanding enclosure. The prep work begins with sanding down the little support marks and stuff. I really love this grinding pen with these foam sanding discs. Makes really quick work of this step. And anywhere I find the little supports that I may have left in here, just getting those out with an X-Acto or some nippers. While unfortunate, misprints do happen. And I happen to have a pretty bad misprint right here on the underside of his leg that I'm going to repair with some putty. But he also has a lot of texture in his leg right here, so this gives me an opportunity to share a quick tip. If you have a piece like this that has a lot of texture and it needs to be repaired, the easiest way to duplicate that texture is to make a pattern stamp, and you can do that with a little bit of hot glue. You want to find the flattest spot of texture that you can find, apply a dollop of hot glue, and let it dry. Then, when you pop it off, you got yourself a pattern stamp. Once you have your putty roughly in place, you use the pattern stamp to stamp the pattern into the putty. And just kind of, do your best to line it up and make it look as natural as you can, kind of blend it into the existing texture. And I've found sometimes it's helpful to use some needle nose pliers for some hard to reach places. You do need to apply a little bit of force to get this pattern to take, but sometimes it's a little hard to get to, and so the needle nose pliers gives you that bit of reach and leverage that you need to successfully clone the pattern, the texture onto your patch. And with the prep work complete, it's time to start the prime. Because of the ice spikes that I want to keep transparent and all the little nooks and crannies in this base, I opted to use a brush application of the primer. It's just much easier rather than trying to mask off around all this crazy geometry. For the base, I'm going to be using this Vallejo metal color steel on the plinth and on these little node things sticking off here. I want the metal down here on the base to be a little bit different than the chrome I'm going to be using on the body. For the Gotham City sort of emblem thing here, I'm going to be using this rough iron from Army Painter. I'm really digging this metal color steel from Vallejo. It's just got such a nice kind of rich and deep metallic color. Definitely going to be using this more often. And the rough iron is pretty satisfying as well. And for the metallic parts on his suit, I go with this trusty Vallejo metal color chrome. You're probably saying to yourself, those ice crystals look like poop. I wonder how he's going to fix it. Well, I'm going to show you how I fix it. You're going to need a UV torch, some UV protection goggles, a brush, and some clear resin. First step is to cover your looking balls with your UV goggles, and then you're going to want to take your brush with a little bit of the clear resin, apply a thin layer over the parts that you want to make a little more clear. It'll instantly clear up the haziness and the cloudiness that you see in the current transparent parts. Then you'll use your UV torch to cure that for a few seconds all around as best you can. And it doesn't really need a whole lot of cure time. And then there you go. Now you've got a nice, transparent, clear, crystal piece. Now later we're going to be covering that with a gloss varnish. But for now, let's speed run through the rest of these little crystals. Oh yeah, the big ones turned out really, really nice. I'm super happy with how this looks. So now I'm just going to go through the rest of the transparent pieces just the same way. Now I'm ready to apply some of this blue alcohol ink to the ice spikes on the base and the little frozen model of his wife that he's holding. For the armor on his suit, I'm going to use this gunmetal blue from Vallejo. And now I'm going to use this Army Painter matte black on the rest of his suit and just kind of trim out around the armor parts. And for the badging on his tanks that I'm going to be painting yellow and red later on, I first have to give them a base coat of cold white. And then I went in with some Vallejo chrome to touch up some of the metal spots on the armor and the tanks where the blue had oversprayed a little bit. Going back to work on the tank, I'm going to use this Army Painter Pure Red for the valves and some of the triangle badging. Then I'm going to use this Demonic Yellow from Army Painter for some of the warning labels and stuff on the tanks back here. I'm going to use this brass color from Vallejo to break up the metal bits on his armor and these little valve covers, these big screws that he's got, really just to add a little visual interest to the armor and, well, because it looks cool. And now begins my favorite part of the process, the weathering with this Vallejo dark wash. I'm going to apply this to the base and to the other metal pieces. Just really gives them a little bit of age and kind of starts to bring out some of the details in the texture. Applying wash used to kind of freak me out when I was just starting out painting because it just seems like you're covering it with such a mess. But when it settles out and really brings some definition to your metal pieces, you really can't do without it. Next, I'm going to add some of this dark blue-gray as a dry brush to the higher spots on the black. That way the black doesn't look so flat. You know, the dark blue-gray gives it a little bit of highlight, but still has the appearance of being black. So it's a great solution for this. And to add one final bit of definition to the metal pieces, I'm going to use this Tamiya panel liner in all the little recesses in the metal bits. Time to have some fun with saturation. I'm going to be using this white alcohol ink. First on the portrait to give it a bit of a zenithal, since he's going to be mostly this kind of one solid blue color. The zenithal will give the saturation differences I needed for the highlight and the low light and really bring out some of those details in his face. I'm also using the alcohol ink to set the stage for the OSL on the tanks and on the torso. For the portrait, I'm going to use this Azure from Vallejo. It's a really nice kind of pastel-y blue. I think it's a perfect tone for his chilly blue skin. Next, I'm going to use this contrast paint from Citadel called Pilar Glacier. And this is interesting stuff because it will leave the whitest parts white, and in the lower parts, when it dries, it kind of settles into a really dark, deep kind of blue tone, which is perfect for the shadows on his portrait. Going back to work on the OSL, I'm going to use this cold white from Vallejo to increase the intensity of certain spots in the OSL. like in the center dot here where the light is emitting from, around the edge where, it'd catch a little more light. Inside these little dots, I wanted to have a little more intensity in there. And on the tubing, kind of running around his torso, just kind of on the upper edges of the tubing, I wanted to add a little intensity there too, before applying the color to the OSL. And I did the same for the windows in the tanks to increase their intensity and hit the edges a little bit where they might be catching some light. And while waiting for those to dry, I finished base coating the portrait with some glossy black from Vallejo. All right, let's get this OSL finished up. I'm using this transparent red from Createx to apply the color to the bright red dot here in the middle of his torso. And I'm going to use the transparent light blue from Createx on the tubes, the conduits, whatever these things are that are throwing off some light here, and the windows in the tank that are giving off a bit of the same blue glow. There's also a couple spots on the gun. Yeah, just keep building it up till it looks nice. Back to work on the portrait now. I'm adding some Vallejo chrome to the lenses and the frames of his goggles. And I'm going to use some of this alcohol ink in the lenses for that signature MrFreeze look. And the last step on the portrait is to use this Terrestrial Titan from Army Painter as a wash on his lips and kind of in the low spots on his face. Once I was satisfied with the portrait, it's time for the final weathering effects on the base. And I'm going to start with this weathering effect snow from Vallejo. I have never used this stuff before, so let's give it a try. I'm glad my better instincts kicked in, and I chose to use a stick rather than a brush. I don't think this would have come off if I'd used a brush. So I used this little wooden dowel kind of stick to just kind of layer in some of this very pasty effect snow. I'm using it to cover up the seams here, as I've been planning from the beginning. And it's a little bit sticky. It's a little bit kind of interesting to work with. Once I got the hang of it, though, I was able to kind of start to spread it around, and I tried to make it look as realistic as I could, while at the same time covering up, these big gaps in the base. Once it sets, it's nice and solid. It's got these little kind of crystals in it, and it looks like real snow. It's good stuff. Definitely be using this again in the future. I couldn't decide between two brands of the frost effects, so I bought them both, so you don't have to. And after a little bit of spoon testing with the GreenStuffWorld, I liked how thick it kind of worked and was, but on the thin application, it didn't quite fractal the way I liked as much as the Vallejo in the thin parts. And I knew I was going to need that fractaling for the transparent bit here. So I like the definition of the Vallejo, so I think that's the way we're going to go. So to apply this Vallejo special effect game color frost, I'm going to use an old brush, a trash brush, because I wasn't quite sure what this was going to do. It turns out it does kind of just work like paint. You don't have to thin it down or anything, but I just dispensed a little bit onto my brush and kind of brushed it in position. You do have to wait a few minutes to see it. It takes a little while to dry and to start to kind of fractal up. So you do have to kind of be patient with it. But yeah, it just kind of goes on like paint, and then you just let it dry and it crystallizes up, and it looks pretty cool. And with the final ice crystals in place, I was ready to move on to assembly. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the making of Mr. Freeze, and if you enjoyed this video, you would probably like a lot of the other videos on my channel, so make sure you check those out. Hit that like and subscribe, and you will be notified when I am online streaming. You can jump on there, we can have some chats, laughs, it's a good time. So, until then, as always, take it easy.